this Regional Governing Board special meeting to order, and we'll start with roll call.
Beck.
Here.
Irwin.
Here.
Mather.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Willie.
Here.
Whitaker.
Here.
Hogendorf. Okay. We have a quorum.
Review of the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda today? If not, we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved. I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Mather.
Aye.
Willie.
Aye.
Beck.
Aye.
Irwin.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Has been approved. Item number 3, discussion and possible action for the approval of removal of Muscatine County from the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Disability Service Region per Section 5.5B of the Region's 28E agreement.
Mr. Chair, I've presented a letter to the chair and the CEO and copies to the board members, and I think some folks out there may have it up. We've obviously had some
It would
struggles.
be my request that you read the letter.
Oh, absolutely. December
Because
20.
not everyone has a copy.
Sure, and if anyone would like one, I've got a few extra here. Dear CEO Elam and governing board members, as you know, the last few months have been challenging for the Eastern Iowa region and for its member counties. Fiscal shortfalls and new unfunded mandates have generated high anxiety and prompted difficult decisions. Each of us has tried as best we know how to chart the path forward into an uncertain future. Financial pressure is the leading cause of conflict within American families, and unfortunately, our region has been no exception. Our economic uncertainty has caused frustration among us, and at times, that frustration has expressed itself in incomplete communication and even squabbling between members of the region. Muscatine County acknowledges that we have not always acted to defuse the situation, but have also contributed to rising tensions. We all have the goal of providing the best possible service to the most vulnerable residents of our 5 counties. Further escalation of intra-region conflict will threaten this shared mission. We note that Section 4.7 of the Region's 28E agreement provides a method for resolving such disputes. We therefore invoke the mandatory mediation provision pursuant to Section 4.7A with regard to 1, the removal of Muscatine County from the region, and 2, Muscatine's fiscal year 2020 transfer payments to the region. We are advised by council that invoking mediation under the 28E agreement operates to stay any formal act or decision of the parties with respect to the subject matter of the mediation. Accordingly, Muscatine County respectfully requests that the region and all member counties observe the mandatory mediation provisions by 1, refraining from taking any action concerning the above disputes pending mediation, and 2, referring this invocation of mediation to both the governing board and each board of supervisors of the member counties for acceptance of and formal action to agree to mediation. We hope that by pursuing mediation, we will find an amicable resolution of all matters now in dispute. Sincerely yours, Nathan Mather, Chair of the Muscatine County Board.
Nathan, I have a question about your letter. It has only your name on it and not the rest of your board's name on it. Is your board total name?
We haven't had time to convene a special meeting, but yes, it is. And we will affirm this letter at our Monday meeting.
Because, you know, we've heard things before and it hasn't worked out that way. So that's the reason I'm just asking you if the rest of your board concurs on this letter?
Unfortunately, the other 3 members were not here, but Scott is here. I think, Scott, we have spoken. I've spoken with the other members as well. So that's your opinion as well?
Yeah.
Okay, discussion from the board.
I think you guys all know that I've been struggling with this. I sent an email to everybody the other day. I reached out to Jeff Sorensen and had a very good conversation with Jeff yesterday, on Wednesday. Probably my biggest concern, Nathan, is as you as a chairperson, if we would go through this remediation, would you be willing to, I know as a chairperson of the Board of Supervisors, you make the decision on who sits on what committees. Would you be willing to remove yourself from this board and place somebody else on this board for the final 6 months? I have I think you've been very vocal, even though you've sat at this board and you voted right along with every one of us on budgets and decision-making, and during our decision-making process. You have not voted against anything, but yet you've been very vocal and outspoken on how you feel that the region's been treating Muscatine County, and you posted a pretty pointed social media post the other day that I was frustrated with. That's probably the most frustrated I've been with, because I feel like we've been sitting, and Clinton County and Muscatine County have been pretty side by side and pretty close in our conversations about funding and budget and different things. So it really, that really hit. I mean, and I think we've all been a little personal offended. You made a good point at Monday's meeting that this is not a personal issue, this is a budget issue, this is not this is a business issue for Muscatine, and I agree with you. I feel that as a board member, sitting on my board, I'm to represent my county, Clinton County, and my constituents. Sitting on this board, I'm representing all the constituents of the region, and trying to make the best decisions. And I think we've all been doing that. We've worked very diligently, having to make cuts and make those decisions. But for you to sit there and make those decisions with us, and then to turn around and try to, I'm gonna say, throw us under the bus, it's frustrating for me. So I'd be more willing if you could sit here right here, because this is gonna be you speaking for yourself. If you have to be here to help on a transition period, but I feel that Muscatine, because you're a 5-member board, correct?
That's correct.
So you could have 2 of you sitting here for a 1 or 2 months as a transition period until somebody else is up to speed. I feel that we have to ask you to not be sitting at this table, because I think you're part of the contention, and you're not helping it when it goes back to your county.
Well, I wish you'd asked me that sooner, because now you're kind of catching me off guard.
I
don't know. I mean, you emailed everybody else, so
I didn't
folks
know
have-
where I was going. I came in here and I sat next to Becky and I said, I don't know how I feel. This throws another little bit of a wrench into the conversation that we're having this morning, but I just feel, and you and I have talked, we've communicated one-on-one, we've had phone calls. I think we have a good relationship. It's just when you start throwing the whole group together, then we start to get a little more tense. And
Sure.
It's not, and I felt it had been very good. And then, actually a much better relationship with everybody sitting at the board table this year, up until about 2 months ago. And I wish this would have came Monday, or I wish it would have came a month ago, or even 2 months ago, when we started having these conversations to try to get some results, so.
Well, I don't want to take the time to argue with all the premises you laid out. I don't think I've been in lockstep. I voted against the one-time granting. The information that was presented to us, I could say, in February was not the information that was presented to us in September. But be that as it may, I don't see that. I'm certainly willing to consider that, and I'm certainly willing to consider also, a transitionary period, because anybody else who got onto the board right now is going to be coming in cold.
Yes.
There's a lot of information that they'd have to catch up on, and it's a very short time to do it, especially if a mediation's going on. I view the mediation as a separate question, because that's a mandatory provision under the 2080. There's really no way around that. But I'd certainly be willing to discuss it with my board. I'm not going to make any promises, but I'm certainly willing to relinquish this position in a transitional way if we think that that's going to be in the best interest of everybody. Because I think you and I agree, and everybody here agrees, we're here to serve the folks in the region. And so I understand you were concerned by our presentation of the notice of withdrawal, and that was just a function of the time frames put forth in the 2080. And the 2080 may not be the best document, but it's what we've got to work with.
Right.
I think the frustration is we'd made that, and we think in good faith, and then we get blindsided by a motion in November that was not on the agenda to kick us out, effective 6 weeks later. with DHS telling us we can't spend a dime of our Fund 10 money, which would mean we can't pay for the lights, we can't meet payroll, I mean, let alone provide services. We got to take anybody out of an institution, turn them loose. So, you know, we were scared. We were scared by, oh my goodness, everything was coming on. So, you know, I think between that, the frustration of, you know, we've got financial challenges, and we've got we got to figure out the children's health system too, some way, somehow. So, you know, there have been some regrettable things, I think, said on both sides, and I'm certainly responsible for some of those. And if, you know, I'll certainly have that discussion with my board.
Don't you think you made that decision, Nathan, clear back when you did your original budget and you didn't budget to put the money back in to the region?
What decision is that?
When you didn't budget to put the money back into the region?
No, we made that, but you're saying we made that decision when, I'm not understanding your
You
question.
probably did it when you made budget
We
last
did what?
spring.
We did what?
Didn't include that fund?
Right.
Right, no, yeah, that was clear from January, and we communicated that to the board and to the fiscal agent for
But I
quite a while.
guess the response at that time was, we'll look at it down the road and see if we can put it back in. We've asked you numerous times if you were going to put that money back into the region.
And I've been
and
clear
pay your
every
portion.
time that we don't have the funds.
I understand that, you have.
And the response from the region has been, hey, if you put it in and you guys need it back, which we would, then the fiscal agent fund will give you enough money. Well, we're still looking at $700,000 deficit in the fiscal agent fund. Every other time transfers have been made back to a member county, there's been money there to make the transfers.
Right, but still, the agreement in this particular 28E states that if there is not enough money to go back, then the cuts affect all counties.
And they will.
Right, and that's exactly right. But by you not putting your money back in, that doesn't level out the playing field. It also creates a lack of trust when somebody does something like that.
Well, I understand where you're coming from, I do, and I would reiterate that I think the lack of trust came a long time ago, and Ken wasn't on that board, he had nothing to do with this decision, but when Scott County had been historically, at first through no fault of his own, underfunding the region. And then when the opportunity came to kick in more money, that request was not made. You know, David Farmer said at the last meeting, Scott County probably has the money, I don't want to misquote you, David, but more or less that Scott County has money that it can put in to at least help address this situation, and that simply no one had asked Scott County yet. So the numbers presented at the November meeting suggested that Muscatine has contributed almost $900,000 more than services it's received.
Is that including your region expenses, or is that just for your services?
You would have to ask David. But and as a result of David's calculations, he was prepared to recommend to the governing board in November that Muscatine be forgiven that $311,000 because of our imminent withdrawal from the region in June. So, you know, on the one hand, the reason we don't have the money is because we've contributed as we've been asked. We've levied the max when we've been asked, except for the year when everybody levied zero because we were concerned about budget.
And this year when you didn't levy appropriately?
I'm sorry?
And this year when you had the error in the.
You're right,
in the
we
levy.
were off by 10 cents in the levy, and I think that resulted in, like, Felicia, help me out, but maybe $11,000 difference.
Probably.
Probably.
Right about there.
So, yeah, we made a clerical error, and, you know, I'll take responsibility for that. But the reason that we don't have the money is because we've contributed everything we've been asked to contribute. And now that we're tapped out, and we don't have the money, and the region doesn't have the money to give to us, it's hard for us to say, we're gonna give money that is already encumbered. We've levied our max, except for the $10,000 clerical error this year. And it's hard for us to say, we are going to put our people at risk with nothing but a promise or a suggestion that the region's gonna give us money, when the region itself, 3 months ago, had a projected deficit of $1.5 million. So, you know, we have to act to protect our people, and, you know, I understand your question about trust, but I also would ask you why you haven't been demanding that Scott put its money in.
Why haven't you been demanding?
I didn't realize the scope of the problem until about 3 months ago.
And all of us were in that point, because when all of these last-minute expensive crisis services came on, plus the delayed billing, we've had error after error after error. As far as the problem is when all of these things came online and there's no waiting list, we're inundated. So we have a lot more people that are on it, there's a lot more costly services that are being expended and sent out. And we're at the point where we're gonna have to make some tough decisions on what we're gonna keep and what's gonna go.
Mhm.
And nobody is, you know, I've had numerous discussions with legislators on this issue, and their response is, you might have to cut. And I said, well, you're making these essential services that we have to pay for, so
Mhm.
they're going to have to make the decision on what we cut. We have reacted to every single decision that's been put before us at that particular time. We can't Monday morning quarterback. We
Sure.
react as we go, and we deal with it as we go, and we do it together. The problem is when your county decided to keep your money to take care of your own folks, we're not thinking as a region. You're thinking as Muscatine County.
Well, 2 or 3 years ago, we had a meeting, I want to say it was up in DeWitt, it's probably 2 years ago, where we addressed the issue of Scott County's contributions. So it's not exactly true that no one's brought this up before. Our entire board is continually reiterating.
No, it's been an
this.
ongoing thing.
And, you know, we've asked the Scott County to do it. Scott County, well, when Carol was here, she said, hey, we joined her with Lori in lobbying the legislature, let us have more taxing authority, and Scott County will raise. That happened in part, you know, so, and I understand the reasons for it. But again, as you say, we can't Monday morning quarterback. We made a decision back in January that was well within the knowledge of this board. And we've been waiting to see what, I mean, because when we made that decision in January, the fiscal reports that were presented to us from the board did not, as I recall, show a fiscal agent deficit this year. There was money left in the fiscal agent fund.
Mhm.
So by the time that we were invoiced for that $155,000 requested payment, there was negative 1.5 million at the end of the year in the fiscal agent fund. Now, I understand that you see it as us not putting our money in, but what we are facing is a situation where we're turning loose people that we have in institutions, if the region doesn't have money. We are turning loose, or we're cutting off services. We're cutting off our trustee program that keeps people stable. So, you know, and those folks are gonna end up in jails, they're gonna end up in emergency rooms, and the costs are going to skyrocket. So I understand your frustration. We're all frustrated. But I'm questioning whether your concern is with Muscatine's decision to leave the region or with Muscatine's inability to pay.
I look at it this way, Nathan, your county has to do what you think is right for your county. I get that, I totally respect that, I understand that. But the problem I have is when we make agreements in this room to work as a region, and even when we talked about it last spring when we were talking about budgeting, and Cedar and Jackson had a surplus. In order to get everything where we needed to be by state code, and by the Senate files and House files, we had to make sure that we didn't levy at the correct, we didn't levy as high as we could have.
Correct.
Right. And
Levy the
we've
maximum.
been dealing with this shell game with these Senate files for 5 years. Because one time it says you have to have this much in your fund. The next time it says you have to have this much in your fund. This time it says that, you know, you've got to get your spending capacity down to this level as a region. We found out that when we get to the levels that they say, we don't have enough cash flow. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. Did we know that last March? No. I mean, it's an ever-changing thing. So we're at the point where we either have to limit the amount of people that we service, and the services that you're talking about aren't necessarily ones that we've said we're gonna cut. I mean, you can't just let people go, I mean, on that kind of
But you
situation.
understand that if DHS has told us if we're removed from the region, we can't spend a dime. So those people automatically get let go.
But the thing is why didn't you check on that before you guys voted on it?
We did. Our understanding is that we were able to. The first time I heard this opinion from DHS was last Friday in a telephone call. Now, I disagree with the interpretation of the law, and I've asked our county attorney to look at it, but that's the first time we've had it. In fact, we didn't have an issue of having to deal with what would happen if we were kicked out of the region until this special meeting was proposed, which was on Monday. So we've had 4 days. Now, I completely sympathize, and I would contend The region is in a similar problem. We've more or less agreed to take the position with regard to the children's mental health system. We don't have the money, even though we're legally required to do it. We're not doing anything as both to protect our budget, to protect our folks who are there. But nevertheless, it's something we're required to do under state law, and we've said we don't have the money, we can't do it. Well, that's what Muscatine County's position is. We're in the region, we don't have the money because of everything we have contributed to the region. And so just like the region is saying we can't do child mental health, we're saying we can't make this transfer payment.
But the difference is we would have, I mean, we paid out to other counties previously when they did not have enough, and we paid it back out to them. So you've seen that we do that.
Mhm. But I've also seen that when we did that, there were millions upon millions of dollars in the fiscal agent fund, okay? Now there's not, there's a deficit. We've made 2 rounds of budget cuts. There's still a massive deficit. In order for the region to even make us last till the end of the fiscal year, not cash flow, but last till the end of the fiscal year, we would need $700,000 put in the region's fiscal fund to bring it even, and then another $320,000 roughly to give us the ability to reach the end of the fiscal year, to say nothing of cash flow, which would probably be about another $300,000. So we're looking for someone to put in $1.5 million. And again, this is not an indictment of Ken. These decisions were made before he was there. But the experience we have with Scott County suggests that it would be a mistake to leave our residents' goodwill in the hands of a board that's got to contribute that much money. And had we addressed this problem earlier, again, not trying to Monday morning quarterback, we wouldn't be in this situation.
But at that time, it made no sense, I mean, in some ways, it made no sense for them to do it.
I understand.
Again, that's a Monday morning quarterback decision.
Right, and we're dealing with the facts on the
Right.
ground. The facts on the ground is that there's no money to give back to us to cash flow.
Well, and another fact on the ground is the fact that the legislators at the end of their session last year passed some additional bills that obviously we weren't prepared to fund. But they said, July 1st, you will do it.
Yeah.
You'll have your crisis services up and running. And we've talked at this board also about the fact that had we known what we know now, we wouldn't have given those grants to the providers of services. But we gave those grants because they were going to provide the services that the legislators were saying that we had to start providing. And we felt we needed to contribute to that so they would have some startup funds to do that.
And most of
And
them are
so-
doing what they said they were
And
going to do.
yes, and most of them are doing what they've said they were
And
going
they're
to
all
do.
incredibly
But we
valuable
also
programs.
have discussed the fact that the sustainability of it is the big question. And we've also said for years that the legislators are ignoring the situation and the problem. And I guess, you know, when I look back at the minutes and review, when we talked about the budget, when we talked about the contract with Robert Young, you in fact seconded the motion on both of those cases to approve the budget, to approve the contract with Robert Young, knowing that they were all, I mean, the money had to be there, but we still had to provide the service. The money isn't there, but we still have to provide the service.
But the information, and I reviewed the budget presentation that was made either February 14th or 15th, that was made at that time to the governing board, said that, and I can't quote it, but I can paraphrase it, by the end of fiscal year 21, under the budget that's proposed, things will be tight. By fiscal year 22, we'd be negative.
That's right. We were told that.
So, yes.
We were told that if the legislators didn't come around and allow us to
Right.
increase the levy so that Lynn and I had an interview this week, and I told the person that interviewed us way back when they changed from county services to regional services. Julie Jetter's here with us, and she'll say, I did say it many times, because at that time I was I was the chairman of the governing board for the state of Iowa. And I said, the system is not broken. What is broken is the funding stream.
Absolutely.
And the legislators would never remove that cap. This is what you have to spend, and this is what you have to provide. And they've never really been on board since that. And every region in the state has a different cap. And I can understand why you want to go to the south one, because theirs is 42.28. Ours is only 30.78. It's the maximum we can levy. And yes, Scott County didn't do what we thought they were going to do, but I also see why they didn't, because of their carryovers and the amount of money that they had set aside.
Sure. Yeah.
So I can see why they chose, but that was no fault of Lori. That was that 5-member board that said, this is what we're gonna do, and we're not gonna raise it to the maximum that we could. And so there's nothing we as a board could do about that, but work to try to provide the services that we're mandated to provide. And then, on top of that, they take Core Plus services and make them mandated services, which were all extremely expensive services.
Well, an additional $600,000 to our June 30th end of year
Yeah.
was, we expected 12.3 million, and so far we spent 12.9 million. And again, we're only generating 9.3 million as a region, and we spent 12.9 million. I'm gonna take a step back. So you said, what do you need to have to get through September? Well, yeah, because you're gonna have to be funded.
The first
So
3
it's-
months the property tax
to
comes
the
in.
property tax. Yeah, so you had to maybe come up with 600,000 and then another 300,000?
Well, so what I'm saying is there's 3 parts to it. There's what the fiscal agent fund needs in order to get to 0, which right now is about 600,000-700,000-ish, based on current projections. Is that,
David,
am I in the ballpark?
If we exclude Muscatine,
And the reductions from Monday's meeting, David, would they be in there yet?
That's, yeah, because we had.
that was that second file I went through.
Yeah, we had an $810,000 projected deficit, and we made, what, about 140, or was it 180?
141 something.
So 670,000
Yeah.
roughly.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
I have a net 700. We're only off about, well, only.
It's all right.
It's a matter
It's all
of
relative,
zeros,
yeah.
yeah.
It's, I'm closer to $500,000.
Okay, sure. So there's,
Because there's, again, multiple parts of that. Right now, I have 900 coming in from, no, that's not 9, about 850 from Scott County, 240 back to Clinton County, 300 back to Muscatine County.
what's the 240 to Clinton?
That's to get us through the end of the year.
That's to bring
Okay,
it
so
down.
that's the reverse
That's
transfer.
reverse
Reverse
transfer.
transfer.
Okay,
And the rest to bring that back to 0.
so,
The 850, that's what our next agenda item
That's
is.
the next agenda
Is that
item,
correct?
mhm.
Okay.
so that's an $850,000 contribution from Scott that's recommended?
I'd like some clarity on that from the board.
Okay.
850 is an estimate right now. It would bring Scott County's local fund balance down to a projected 10%.
Mhm.
David, it's the additional 8.
Yes.
So the 1.2.
1.2.
That we had budgeted to provide to the region, and the 850 is additional on top of the 1.2.
So the 2 and change.
Right.
Okay, so whatever number, before, obviously we haven't made the decision yet on the Scott County transfer. So before the Scott County transfer, there's some amount that the region is currently projected to be in deficit. So that has to get paid before the region can hand anybody any money. And if you guys need 240, there's another $250,000 that has to come from somewhere. If we need, Felicia, what do we need to get us through the rest of the year?
If we pay the 311 or not?
Leave that out for right now.
Leave that out right now.
Right, just actually to fund our the services through the end of the year.
Fund crisis services, just so I'm clear, to fund crisis services just for Muscatine,
Right, if we were to do that only.
about 300,000.
So that's the minimum we would need now. So we're up to over $1 million now deficit. And then we need probably a quarter of our budget to cash flow till tax time came in, which would be about another $300,000. So $1.5 million would need to be transferred to the region in order to see and that's without Muscatine contributing. $1.5 million. Obviously, if Muscatine contributed, we need to take that right back. So $1.5 million would need to come from somewhere so we can survive till tax time. And so that's one of the reasons we looked at withdrawing the region. We know because of the amounts we've contributed, and we're not able to stick with that. We're not able to meet those commitments. It's a difficult decision. It's one that we thought long and hard about. We had at least 4 separate meetings where we discussed it, and they went hours and hours. So it's not an easy thing, and it's not something that we take lightly. It's not something that we do for a personal reason, but just seeing the sheer amount of need that's there, it's tough to, without what we regard as having prior indication that those funds would flow, or even interest by the board in asking those funds to flow. It's hard for us to put trust in that.
I guess, it's also very tough on all of us, extremely tough. All we've tried to do through our 5 years, 5+ I guess, years, is to provide the best service that we could to those that are in need of it. And I guess, the thing that has kind of upset me the most is the negativism about Muscatine County and the region. I think Jim said it quite eloquently. I felt it was a personal attack on the rest of the board, when all we've done is come to meeting after meeting after meeting to be able to come up with a solution to try to provide these services. And then when we have, as far as I'm concerned, one of the board members that sat at the table with us stab us all in the back and make us look like idiots.
Well,
And I don't like that at all.
I don't imagine you do, but from our perspective, and I'd ask you to consider that, we made a motion to withdraw, or we signaled our intent to withdraw in November. And if we didn't surprise anybody with it, we were upfront. We talked with Lori, we talked with the board for at least a month or 2 before that. At the same time we made that withdrawal, all of a sudden I'm blindsided with something that's not even on the agenda. You guys made and seconded a motion.
Well, it was a part of
I
the
know.
discussion
Well,
of
I understand.
Muscatine's withdrawal.
I understand. But it wasn't something that was anticipated. You didn't call me, you didn't talk to me first. I don't know that you talked to anybody in Muscatine about it. So effectively, we were told, oh, well, that's nice that you guys want to leave in 7 or 8 months. How about you get out in 6 weeks?
With the specific caveat
Mhm.
that you weren't paying in and you weren't planning on paying in,
Which
and
you've known
this
all
would
year.
have been a lot less.
You've known all year.
Yes,
No.
but one of our meetings, you said we are going to pay. You did, and
Jack.
Ken brought that up at the meeting
Jack.
last week.
You can look at the minutes. It's not in the minutes.
It says
Oh,
obligated.
I think we all.
I said,
think we all
I feel that
clearly
we
heard
are
that.
obligated.
Okay, to me that's.
Okay.
And I know the words were there. And I'm with Jack on this, that, we're talking about all the issues we've talked all over it, but every one of these counties, I feel we're being pointed at, but we're trying to right-size the ship. Other counties have worked with the others to make this right.
Mhm.
And we have one member that isn't. And then on top of that, all the negative press that's discussing about it, I don't hear this coming from the others. And this is about a group. This is what we're talking about, a group. One of our group members not being happy where they are.
You didn't see any negative press until a motion was made to kick us out in 6 weeks.
Oh, we saw
Oh,
negative
we saw
press
negative
before
press.
this.
Well, I respect
No,
We
that.
watched your
I
negative
watched the
board
video.
meetings.
Is
That's
it
the-
negative to discuss difficulties we have with the region? Because I'll admit to that. We discussed the problems that we had.
It's how you say it, not what you
It's
say.
how you went about it.
Well, I know that you guys
You're
are
not
very.
gonna-
Can I interrupt?
Hang on one
Can I
second.
interrupt? Yeah.
I just want to say that I understand you guys were here from the beginning. You're very heavily and certainly emotionally invested in it.
You're
Okay?
right.
And so there's a tendency, I think, to regard anything that's a criticism as personal. as negative.
No, there is a big difference. I mean, this board, we've had our outs over the last 5 years with Clinton County. I mean, everybody's taken their day at the table where we've struggled.
I'm just
And-
getting there now.
But you know what? I gotta give you credit, because you know what? The concerns that you had, you laid it all out professionally in steps. And what did we say, Lori? Answers questions. We wanted clear answers to your questions because we all agreed. That is the way it should work. And
And Jim and I worked together to develop those
Yeah,
questions.
Yeah, I had spoken to Nathan throughout that also. That's why, I'm really struggling with this, because him and I, I reached out, I had started the process, had talked with Nathan, told him what my concerns, like I said earlier, I think Muscatine and Clinton have had very similar conversations throughout the process of this, prior to my being on this board.
Aren't you glad you got on it?
Yeah, Dan told me on Monday, he sent out that I'm still stuck on it next year. So, but anyways,
Good.
and I have raised a lot of questions, but I've gotten answers. I've gotten the answers, and we're moving that direction. And I appreciate Ken being on this board with me.
And I plan to be next
Level-headed.
year too, so.
What's that?
I plan to be here next year.
Yeah. But this is not easy. We are dealing with the lives of some of the most crucial individuals in our counties.
Well, that's what makes it so tough.
Yes.
The most vulnerable are the ones that will suffer.
The September meeting, walking out of there was very somber mood.
It certainly was.
Walking in was tough. Walking out was worse. I guess you two, and I'll just say this, Jack and Dawn, you guys have been on this since the beginning, and I appreciate what you've done. It's been a long process, and it's been tough. We've had some, Nathan, I did reach out to Nathan when I was going through those and developing some of those questions. And like I said, I submitted them, we got the answers, you've come around, I've met with David and Ken and I have met on a couple different occasions and stuff and had those conversations to get a better understanding of them. And I think that's how we got to the point of the next agenda item of an additional ask for Scott County to help equalize out our funding.
And I appreciate you putting that on the agenda.
Yeah, everything comes down to money, That's the
Unfortunately.
unfortunately. I just, why I wanted to interrupt before, we don't need to be any more heated than we were. We've done a great job of having a good conversation this morning. I wish we would have had this conversation, a month ago.
well, and that's where I come up with this. This
Yeah.
should have been about the same time that those questions were asked, and then it would have been appropriate. But the problem is
This is almost
when
hard.
you talk about rushing, you went to vote because it was the deadline and you felt like you had to do that. Okay, this really should have happened before that, if that's how you felt about it. And it would have given you more time to find a different region to go to appropriately
This
too.
isn't about Muscatine's withdrawal voluntarily from the region. This is in response to the motion that was made, or not even a motion, a meeting that was set on Monday, 4 days ago, to have a special meeting to basically rush the process of kicking Muscatine out of the region. No date was set with regard to your resolution says effective immediately. So I take that to mean immediately.
Some of
Yeah.
that comes from the
Well,
fact that we had a vendor. I mean, that was the icing on the cake for a lot of us, when we had a vendor who was told that if we would be cutting peer support immediately.
I know he said that to you, but that, I have my notes, and I had that conversation in Felicia Toppert's office. She can tell you, I never said any such thing.
I'm just saying that the problem is we all have had conversations with our vendors, but not on what services would be cut, what their rates are, any of that. That has all been taken care of by the management team and steering committee. And then they bring those recommendations to us.
And I don't think.
And then this board votes on it. And it doesn't happen till this board votes on it.
But we don't call a provider of services and even hint that there might be a change until the final decision's made.
I respectfully
sorry.
disagree, Jack. If you look at the CEO's report from the Monday meeting, there was a Clinton County meeting with one of their providers to discuss budget issues. That's exactly what happened.
But
Budget issues were discussed. Now, you might say, well, I don't really like the way you did it, and we might disagree on what was said. You know, I tell you, I just deliberately had that conversation, so I wouldn't be accused.
We never had
fruitlessly,
a
I see.
conversation and
No, with Mr. Nowak, with my community services director present, so that this isn't like me trying to gin up crap or anything like that. This is a service, I had the conversation with my peer services provider in Muscatine. Because I say, hey, look, you need to know that we don't know what's gonna happen. There's been talk about kicking Muscatine out of the region. There's been talk about lots of different things that have to happen at the region. I want you to at least have it on your radar, to be prepared that things might change. Okay, I don't think that's an unreasonable task. Now, I can't.
I do, because
Okay.
it wasn't official. It was not official. It was the management team that were discussing possible cuts that they were going to bring to this board the following week. And you took it upon yourself to call Todd and tell him that, hey, you better get ready. You might not have any money to operate. We had not discussed that at all until the following week.
I had no idea until I walked in
No.
the meeting.
That's because I'm the only one who went to the management meeting.
And I'm
That's
gonna
why
I'm gonna
it's set
speak a
up
little
that
bit
way.
What, are the board
Our-
members excluded from the management meeting?
actually, for the most part, we are. And the reason we are is so that they can have a candid discussion about what needs to happen without causing a complete panic across the region.
And that's the first time you've ever said that. Now,
Well, I would agree. My feeling is.
That's how it's always been.
As us, as the board, the mental health board, we are responsible for the financial fiduciary responsibilities of the region. I am not a professional of mental health services. I have yet to sit in on a management meeting. That's not my responsibility, I don't feel, to sit there and second guess them or question them. My responsibility is to make sure that we are watching the financial picture of our region. And I think with the questions that we are starting to form, to do a better job of forming how our financials are going to be presented to us going out as for a longer term, so we have a better understanding. But my job is not to sit there and question on what Becky and Julie and Lori and Lynn, what they feel needs to happen.
sure, I agree with you. And
And then I'll be damned if I'm gonna sit in that meeting and listen to it and then turn around and call one of my providers and have a conversation with them about what was discussed in that meeting.
well, I'll tell you.
Definitely before it's not,
Especially when it wasn't one of your providers.
I'm glad if Ty would have called me, I would have been
So-
fuming.
So, a couple things in response to that. Number one, I was at a management meeting in, it was October. There was one, I can't remember, was it October or September, to deal with an emergency situation that arose with one of our providers in a billing question. I was there. I was, as I understand, the only board member who was there. I was not told that was a problem. In fact, I was thanked for my presence there. Then in October, I went to the regular management team meeting. And the reason I started going in October is because I knew that Muscatine was discussing exiting the region. Therefore, getting a greater in-depth information on what was going on, how things were happening, was crucial to our decision-making. I was not told it was inappropriate for me to go. Hang on. I was not told it was inappropriate for me to go in October. When I went to the November meeting, I did not say a word until the end of the meeting when Lori asked me what my board wanted to know, what my board was thinking. And I answered her questions. I didn't participate in the meeting, I observed it. Now, I have also been told advised by Felicia, our community service director, that it is completely appropriate for members to sit in on that meeting. And she recommended the members do sit in on it. Now, that may be a difference of philosophy, okay? But it's not a personal thing. It's not meddling. Now, the reason I came to the November meeting is the first real item of agenda after the preliminaries was discussion of the impact on Muscatine If there was ever a meeting I was going to go to, it was going to be to hear about what the impact of the discussion was on Muscatine. Now, the reason I talked not just with Scott, or, excuse me, not just with Todd, but with our regional provider, or our county's provider of this service, is because I value the service. I didn't say, I was very careful. I said, no proposal has been made. No suggestion has been made that you will be cut. All I'm saying is the region is facing these difficulties. I want you to be aware of these difficulties and understand that some action is going to have to be taken. If you can lobby, just like other groups have lobbied, for instance, with regard to the telehealth, I think it's eminently fair for every group that provides services to have the same amount of information, okay? And, you know, we hadn't made any decisions yet. It hadn't been proposed to cut telehealth when we announced that decision to providers, and yet somehow they had that information. So this idea that we don't talk to providers until a decision has been made is just erroneous, okay? You may not like the way it happened, and you may not like the result, but to say that it's an inappropriate thing, is at best a matter of personal difference.
I guess.
I'm gonna say, I'm not saying that you're wrong for sitting in that meeting. That's not my issue. My issue is when you walked out of the meeting and you made a phone call to a provider and.
I understand what you're saying.
And misinformation, and you're saying, what you're saying is, you said it didn't happen and the provider's saying it did happen. So now we have that argument, but that, what you overstepped, I feel you overstepped your role by making that phone call. That's my.
And there was conversation between Lori, obviously, and I think Mr. Beck, and maybe some other board members about that. Because Ken, you signaled that you were upset with that before we had any discussion at the Monday meeting.
Well,
But there was no discussion with me. If you got a problem with something that I have done, contact me. Why didn't you?
I didn't find out about till 5 minutes before our meeting, and
Okay.
you know, and I'd like to accept your explanation of it, but here's where I have a problem. All of our vendors know we got problems going on. They've known we've had problems for at least 3 months. Why do we need to inform them again that we have going on problems? I mean, Rich, I'm sure would, you understand we have problems going on. So why after this meeting do we have to bring it up? So, you know, although I'd like to try to accept your explanation, this is where the trust factor starts coming in.
But then,
And that's,
it's
let me
essentially,
finish,
okay.
let me finish.
Okay.
And this is what we're all surrounding here is this trust factor with what's happening in Muscatine, what's happening up here in meetings, of trying to get out of this situation in a whole fashion as best as we can. And when I start hearing explanations like that, and then yet I know our suppliers, our vendors know we're in trouble, that's where I lose the trust factor, to be quite frankly. And that's what, you know, eats at me the most.
Sure.
Because I want to trust everybody who's on this board that we're working together, all horses are pulling forward. And one's not just standing there doing nothing, or even walking backwards. And, you know, and that's where I just don't get that feeling that it's working that way. And, you know, this is all good, you know, conversation, I all agree, but I guess it really comes back down to, do we have a legal opinion on whether we are bound to mediation?
Oh, we just got this
I know,
morning.
but
so-
I mean, have
And
we
what's the
had this,
procedure? So
have we had this?
That's
brought up
provided
before?
in 679C of the Iowa Code.
That's not what I asked. What I asked
Oh.
is there a procedure for if we go ahead and vote today, if we would vote to remove Muscatine from the region, or to send a resolution out to the individual boards to vote on, we can't actually do that, but our individual
No.
boards. At that time, after that action was taken, would this go into effect then as a stay until mediation occurs? Or is it, what's the deal?
I'm not sure legally what that entails.
I mean, we got this right as we walked into the meeting and,
Should we ask,
Julie,
would you have any idea?
you don't know.
I'm sorry, I do not know that.
I mean,
Jack, can you call him? I don't know who's got the proper.
we don't have a lawyer on staff, unfortunately.
Right.
But now, our county attorney advised me in this, saying that it would operate as a stay, because if you make a decision to kick us out, that's irreparable. I mean, services get cut out right away, and then mediation doesn't have much point. And I think the discussion we've had today, I agree, it's a great discussion. And I think We've seen a lot of personal differences, we've seen trust issues, and in my experience, that's the perfect time for mediation. That's where you get a neutral third party come in here and say, guys, you've got issues with each other, or you've got issues with us. What can we work out? And mediation is not binding. Mediation is simply an attempt by a neutral third party to work something out. And so, the 4.7 says, in the event an internal dispute arises amongst or between the governing board, the chief executive officer, or any of the member counties, sounds like we've got ourselves a dispute here, which cannot be resolved.
I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, right. Then the following dispute resolution shall be used: A, mediation conducted pursuant to Chapter 679C of the Labor Code. So, we got a dispute. I think it's ripe for mediation, and I would take the opinion. Certainly free to consult. I don't know if we hire a lawyer. We don't have money for that.
Jack,
but-
there's a gentleman that has his hand up. think.
I know,
Okay.
there's another one that was wishing to speak too.
Okay, I just didn't know
But
if he was in.
we do have a public comment
Yeah.
area.
Okay.
Okay, I'll wait for the public.
Yeah.
I was just going to point out, 4.7 then goes to arbitration, which is binding.
Mhm.
But the thing is, 5.5B gives you the authority to supersede that. So there is nothing in 5.5 that says even if arbitration is happening. It says 5.5B, if the governing board feels it's in the best interest of the region for a member county to be removed from the region, the governing board will pass a resolution.
Ed,
That's
I
the
respect
authority
your
you
legal
have.
authority, but I think you're
I mean,
wrong.
this is a 28E, it's an intergovernmental agreement, it's not a contract.
That's right.
Therefore, if you have received notice already from a county that they want to leave, and then you feel it's in your best interest, 5.5B gives you that authority regardless of whether there's been a call for arbitration. And I'm just curious, why would you call for arbitration after you say you're gonna leave? I mean, a vote of the Muscatine board said, basically, 5 members saying we're gonna leave.
Ed, I don't know if you got a copy of the
Well,
request
I
for
got a
mediation.
copy of it.
Okay,
And
well then
I
you would
know One
note.
of the supervisors,
Mr. Chair, is this public comment?
no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We'll just
So
leave it
I
at
would-
that.
I would say, well, Ed, first of all, as a Muscatine
Wait,
resident,
it's not public comment, so.
Oh,
let's
I'm not a
leave
member of
that-
the public, so-
Let's leave that to public comment, your response.
so what I would say with regard to the mediation issue.
Just one second.
Yeah.
Could, Mr. Chair, could we have the identification who spoke? 'Cause
Yes.
I really
Yes.
don't know.
Dr. Edward Askew, I'm a resident of Muscatine County.
Mhm.
And to also clarify, I am running for a board position on the next board. That's why I'm here today, finding out what in the world's going on.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Surprises me that you'd want us kicked out sooner, but the issue is not the withdrawal, sir. The issue is the removal. That's stated clearly in the mediation request. So that's, we're all agreed, I think, that the withdrawal has been noticed. We're not asking, we don't think there's a dispute about that. I may be wrong. But the issue that I think we have a dispute about is the removal and the transfer payments, and that's what the mediation is requested on.
Correct. Ken?
Yeah, if I may ask for opinion from DHS, because we've heard, opinions on what happens if Muscatine would be removed early. For me to make a decision, I want to hear directly from DHS what is the issues.
Is there anything you could share with us, Julie?
Yeah, I guess that's what you can or cannot share with us, so.
I just got just a couple quick points. The first one is that on a statewide basis, states, counties, individuals being served have all recognized that the regionalization of mental health services has been a benefit to the state of Iowa. And that what regions are able to do has been tremendous across the state. The work you do is greatly appreciated. And so anything that DHS can do to support you as a region and to keep the people that are being served, which are the most vulnerable people that you have mentioned, safe.
Absolutely.
And in that process is definitely what our focus is. Okay, so we want to make sure even the individuals living in Muscatine County, along with Clinton and Cedar and Scott, and
Jackson.
Jasper. Sorry.
Jackson.
It's very, very important that those people are the main focus of whatever decision you make. There are a few pieces of code that I have shared with Muscatine County, I've shared with Lori, that indicate, and I've shared, with Jim, that if Muscatine leaves early, you could leave them in some serious financial hurt, because they cannot use their dollars unless it's according to an approved regional management plan. If they are not part of the Eastern Iowa Regional Management Plan, because they are off of your 28E, they have no way to spend their dollars unless they are accepted into another region. So that could leave 6 months of a very trying time for Muscatine residents that are very vulnerable.
Julie, is there also in our conversation the other day, there was a comment made that there's also some legality whether they can even levy for that fund if they're not part of a region?
If Muscatine is not part of a region, the Department of Management has indicated, and of course,
Right.
I can't say that this is a final decision, this is just preliminary discussion, that they would not have a regional per capita to levy on, and thus they would not have an ability to levy for their mental health dollars. And that is also a huge concern, because then that's affecting their whole fiscal year 2021, no matter where they go. And that is putting their individuals they're serving at tremendous risk.
Okay, my problem is we're struggling with issues within the management team, and we're struggling with issues within the governing board on the fact that those frank discussions that are happening in the management team meetings and steering committee meetings are getting put out into social media and the media before this board even has a chance to vote on it, creating an undue scare to everyone within the region. And so we're looking out for everyone within the region, not just our own county, but everyone. Cedar is a very small player in this entire
As Jackson
group,
County
as
is.
is Jackson County.
And
We
Clinton has a
are
very
provided
large
the
user.
least amount of services, but we still see the benefit of regionalization based on the fact that we can apply many different services that we would not have had access to previously.
And
So
that was the whole
and
purpose
that's
for
why
the
we see
change.
the benefit of it. But justly, Muscatine gets way more services, Clinton County gets way more services, and so does Scott. There have been plenty of times over the last 5 years we could have said, we're gonna take our ball and go home. But we didn't do it. We worked as a team, we tried to get through it. We had some personality conflicts sometimes then, but you know what, we still got through it. The problem is at that time, we discussed things before we voted to leave a region and before we did anything else. I guess, I go back to the arbitration thing, and this should have happened a long time ago if that's the case, and not just receive it today. And that's my problem with it. I didn't like the fact that, we heard about, that the board was going to forgive Muscatine County's $300 and some thousand before it had ever even come to this body to talk about. I caught that off of the news or in the paper, and I contacted Lori and I said, we didn't vote on this yet.
I didn't tell the news that.
Well, I don't know how else it got there, Nathan. So, I guess, that's.
The documents that go out as our agenda and the accompanying items are public record. I shared those documents with a member of the media because they were asking questions. They specifically requested the documents from me. Now, I could say, hey, you have to go through a full information request and put them through that, but I try not to
It
do
doesn't
that.
change the fact that they need to sit in this meeting then and listen to it when we hadn't voted on
I don't tell
it
the
yet.
papers what to write. I'm sorry that they misspoke
I get that, I
Ken?
understand that,
Yes.
but it's happening frequently.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Julie, it is Julie, right? Okay.
Yes.
I've also heard that, if Muscatine was removed prior to July 1st, that the possibility would be DHS would ask another region to take them on before. Is that true?
Actually, there's a code section in 331, 389 that does give department authority to work with the county in seeking a region or assigning a region. I will say that we have a new director at the Department of Human Services, and so what would happen is there would be fact-finding and all of the information would be given to Director Garcia for consideration. And I have no idea what that decision will be.
I don't think it's been tested yet. I think this is the first case. But would there be a fact that, let's say one of the other regions is, I think somebody mentioned it was at 4078, and we currently, Muscatine has levied at 37, or whatever, 30 and change.
Yeah.
Would that be a factor in that requirement? Obviously not being able to levy as much as that they have into the adjacent.
I think all of the facts would be put together and presented to the director, and I can't anticipate what that decision will be.
So I guess just in summarizing, even though, and again, just playing out the scenario, if Muscatine was removed from eastern Iowa, and you mentioned they could not, do services, there is another way for them to get the services taken care of. It just would take a little more
There
effort.
would be provision, yes.
So I just want to make sure it's clear that, it's not a do or die situation. There are other alternatives in order to make the system work. It just may not be as straightforward as other ways.
Do you have any idea how long that process would take?
I do not, and
And-
so the timing
Yeah,
issue,
first-
I can't
Yeah.
tell you.
The first time?
And if I'm correct, that in the past, when DHS has found, when counties have tried to leave other regions and been unsuccessful in joining others, DHS has most recently placed them back in the region they came from. Is that correct?
That is correct, that was under a different director.
Sure.
And so I can't predict how
Right.
Director Garcia might do.
So there's a lot of unknowns.
Can I ask, is it just by the director making that decision, or is there a board that makes that decision?
It is the director.
Is the director?
Okay, we've got this letter, we've got this request, we have our motion, or we have our discussion on possible removal of Muscatine County. What is the pleasure of the board? How do you wish to proceed? I guess my recommendation is, I really think we need some legal counsel on all of this.
So,
And my understanding, if we would vote today, we would take our resolutions back to our individual counties, have those review that, and we would not be able to take action till our next meeting of the governing board.
Well, 30 days.
30 days
30 days.
Member
And
counties have
then
30 days to respond.
Yes.
if they desire to vote. And those.
And then after the
those
30
will come
days,
back to-
what they would come back to us, and then Muscatine County would still have time after that, another 30 days?
No, 10.
No.
10
10
days.
days, okay.
so we're supposed to have a special meeting this afternoon to make our vote based on what happens now.
Well, we were going to have a special meeting on Monday, but then after I talked to Lori and Lynn, at your meeting you had, she said we didn't really have to do it, just so it was done before our board meeting,
Right, you have 30
governing board
days.
meeting, so.
Right.
And, and again, I'm just discussing in general, if the action was taken today for Muscatine to be removed, that would give us time to vet this out. And then if we found that, yeah, this was binding to go into mediation, we would then not vote on it when it came back from the counties, because we have to do another vote, as I understand, once we get the consensus of the counties.
Yes.
To accept their votes.
I think that's right.
Right.
So then we could, at that point, say, okay, we need to go into the mediation and proceed that direction versus taking the vote at that point and then
Sure.
hitting the call.
Correct.
So,
Right.
so to me, I think that would be a logical, procedure to follow. I'm open to other suggestions. I'm just proposing that as being one of the possibilities of
I do
moving
think
forward.
we need to bring up the fact too that what happens in a management meeting stays in a management meeting until it comes to this board.
I'd be happy to add that to the the issues to be mediated.
Okay, and then, you know, I think Jim's request, you know, that you either have somebody here with you or step down as your position on this board, whatever your county decides to do on that. But I think we need to move forward with that as well, so.
I guess I would like some additional information from the Department of Human Services.
Mhm.
I do not want the individuals in Muscatine to suffer from this decision. I want them to be able to receive their services, and we have to find out how that would work.
You know, as we're sitting here and listening to Julie again speaking about that, I guess my take on it is ultimately July 1st, Muscatine County will be going somewhere else.
If they don't get picked up by somebody else,
But
I mean, you know, there
I
might
think
be
the
other
other-
regions that are seeing this and going, no, we don't want to deal with it. But, you know, I don't know how that will work.
So,
Yes.
I guess.
Rich?
I just wanted to say that for the people who are being served by the mental health services that these funds provide for, and for the providers, it's so important that there be a climate of certainty with respect to everything regarding the region, and a protracted disagreement, I think would perpetuate this sense of uncertainty. And I'm not arguing either way. I'm just saying that providers and the people being served need this board to work. You know, I guess that's you know.
And I guess I would say that until this point we have.
I think that there is, I mean, with regard to Rich's point, I think it's a good one. And I think that Muscatine is now facing not a choice between certainty of services and uncertainty. Muscatine is, according to the information we have from DHS, facing a choice between uncertainty and certainty of no services. And there is an option, I think, that we have, and that was on Monday, and this is what I presented at our meeting on Monday. But on Monday, my board said, we will, and we passed them that we would commit to providing on May, I can't remember, Scott, May, in the middle of May, whenever that would be, maybe second week, prior to the region meeting, that we would reassess our finances. And based on the cost-cutting measures that the region is implementing, based on the cost-cutting measures that Muscatine is implementing, we hope that our financial picture will be better and will enable us to make some or all of that payment. And we would, as I understand it, Scott, tell me if you interpreted this differently, we would commit to making up to that $311,000 payment so long as we are still able to cash flow. So whatever is there in excess of our immediate needs for cash flowing, we would commit to paying to the board. Now, can I tell you that will be the $300? I cannot. I can't. It could be zero. It could be, we could be doing a lot better than we expected and be able to make that payment with ease. But that is a way we have to reduce uncertainty. If the board would accept that offer and then take this motion or vote this motion down. I'm just, obviously you guys will do what you want, but that is an option we have to providing services and providing that certainty that Rich has, I think, emphasized.
Dawn, you made a comment when I was starting to state about them leaving July 1st. I guess I didn't think through the possibility of them not being picked up by another region. So as we do our budgeting process, if we would either vote not to have them, or if they would be directed back in by DHS back into our region, which I feel is probably the most likely scenario that's gonna happen, we will have to be basically approving 2 budgets this next budget cycle. We'll have to be budgeting one budget with Muscatine and one budget without Muscatine.
And you can only certify one.
Only certified one.
What happens with that, Julie? Would we have to amend the budget? I mean, would we do it, they voted to pull out effective July or June 30th. So if they, I mean, if we go ahead and do our budget like we would in the normal budget season with them out, if they end up coming back in, would we have the capability to amend the budget to have them come back in?
Yes, you would.
Okay.
Could we wouldn't be able to amend the budget to go down. We'd have to make our budget based on Muscatine being part of our region and
And
do
work
an
it down.
amendment, because we can only go down. We can't go back up.
Is that right? Well, you
Are
can't
you talking
increase
about your
levy.
regional budget, or
Yeah.
are you
Regional
talking about
budget.
your county budget?
No, we're talking about our,
Regional
we're talking about our regional budget.
Regional budget isn't certified, it doesn't go through the Department of Management. The budgets that go through the Department of Management are your individual county budgets.
Okay.
So then they would they have to amend their budget to have the funds come back into the region then at that point? I guess what I'm looking at is, what is there for insurance for us that they're gonna actually
But-
budget again?
But
My
we
understanding
can't.
from
If
what,
we're kicked out, she
if,
said we
what
can't
Julie
levy.
said, if they are not a part of the region for July, on July 1st, they cannot, in their budgeting process, put in a levy for mental health.
That's correct.
Is that not what you said?
What I said, that would actually be for when Muscatine certifies their budget, their county budget, and that happens in March.
Right?
So they have to be in a 28E agreement in order to have a regional per capita levy to budget to.
Mhm.
But how does that work when they've already voted to leave the region
Right
and we
now,
accepted it?
even though they voted to leave, they're a part of your 28E and not taking any of this other in consideration, just their request to leave. They've asked to leave as of June 30th or July
Right,
1st.
right.
So they are under the Eastern Iowa regional per capita until that time, so they can budget the 3078 that you all are budgeting. That is their max. Now, if they're not in your 2080, they don't have a max.
What if we are, let's say Muscatine were kicked out on April 1st after we've certified our levy at the Eastern Iowa
Then
rate?
you will have had your levy and you certified at the time you were at 2080 and that would stay.
Okay.
So that
Julie?
would be a pickle for you if you would leave ours and get into Southeast, but
Yeah.
you certified at 3078, but now all of a sudden you get into another region and you can,
Right.
and you can levy
Which-
42.
It's
Which
one
I
of the
think-
reasons they want to move.
Yeah.
They
Well-
can't levy the increased amount until they're in that other region's 2080.
Mhm.
And that would have to be, if you were gonna look at 2021, that would have to be prior to your March budget.
Right.
Lori, do you have a question?
No, she just answered it, so.
David,
David?
David?
From a fiscal '21 budgeting perspective from the region, I'd rather budget without Muscatine and build up if they were to happen to be reassigned back to back to the region.
Okay.
Okay.
Certainly make it a lot easier.
It makes it easier to build up at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Given the budget differences that we are discussing, we are in that situation of building up rather than
Right.
identifying what to take out.
And as for the individual county budgets, everyone's presumably gonna levy the max. So would that have minimal impact on the county budgets then, ostensibly?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't know if everyone will be at the max right now because of the 40% rule.
Ah.
And
See- see
all
that-
all that did is get bumped 2 years.
Right.
So, again, as I mentioned the other day, if that rule was in place for this June 30, 2020,
Mhm.
we still would have had an exposure for over $500,000 loss.
Right. Well, and you can certify a budget that levies the max and then draw that down. You just can't go up.
Depends on how I'm not sure.
Because, Julie, do you have a thought on that? Is that correct?
Actually, that has happened,
Yeah.
so, yes, you can always decrease your levy, you can't increase it after March, you can always decrease it.
You got that 2.5 months gap, there you go.
Yeah, that's true. 2%.
cannot revert. Is there a motion on it?
No.
No, there is not,
There's
and it's
still-
going to be my recommendation as chair that we table action on this until we have an opportunity to seek legal counsel, to see how all of this will fall into place, and hopefully we can have that before our January meeting,
Okay.
so that we can take action at that time. I just think that, I know that our emotions are very strong, but with this letter, the mediation and with the process that we have to follow, it would be my recommendation that we table action until our January meeting and get legal counsel between now and then.
Julie, would it be possible to arrange a meeting with Director Garcia between now and January 10th?
With what outcome, Maureen?
Well, the whole outcome of, okay, Muscatine wants to leave, could they be assigned? You know, DHS has the ability to assign. We don't want Muscatine hanging out there and not being able to pay for any services. So you mentioned that DHS has the ability to assign, but it's not ever happened, so could we talk
But
with?
can they assign before they're actually not in the region?
Right, I think you need to have all the facts, and I don't think all the facts have been determined by your board. I'm not saying you can't meet with her, I can ask about a meeting.
Okay,
I'm just saying you wanna have all your facts.
okay,
And I do need to clarify, the department has assigned and has reassigned back to the county in which, the region in which the county left. It's just that has not happened under Director Garcia, and so we can't do anything until we have all the facts and give them to her to make that decision. So, a meeting now without all the facts or final decisions might be a difficult thing to get a clear answer from. Not that I would certainly ask for a meeting, I just can't say you get what you're looking for.
okay,
We can always hold a special meeting at another
Right.
time afterwards, so that's, you know.
right.
I would second Jack's motion.
I
He
can't
can't
make
make
Oh,
the
you
a
can?
motion.
that's
I'll
what I
make
was
a
mine was
motion,
strictly
I'll make a
a
motion that we table. That's what I was wondering, but you made the motion, so.
We recommended it, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
recommending-
you're recommending, okay, I'll make the motion that we
I
table.
will second that.
It's been moved and seconded to table any action and to seek legal counsel on
I'll-
the above
I'll accept
mentioned.
that modification to the
Roll call.
motion.
Irwin,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Mather,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wood.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item up is discussion and possible action to request Scott County to transfer additional funds to the region in fiscal year '20.
So moved.
Second.
Now you can have your discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess we're saying requesting, are we requesting?
Yes,
Are we
we're requesting.
an amount?
Yeah, we can do that
Yes,
too.
yeah, can we discuss?
David, what can we request? What do we need?
What
to
are we
request?
planning to move?
Well, so I,
Maybe make it to an amount or something.
I know I've put out that $850,000 mark here, but when I look at that fund balance percentage, it gets me queasy. When I look-
Sure,
you
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So we can't say not to
We-
exceed 2 million?
You
Well, you can say whatever you want, so.
You gotta lighten this one up a little bit.
Why don't you make it 10 while you're at it? you know,
Yeah,
so-
let's go big,
Yeah.
yeah.
Think bigger, Jack.
Well, you're Scott County, so shortfalls you can just take out of your
I-
billfold.
Just take it out of my paycheck, you know?
Is a fund balance percentage a more reasonable target than a flat dollar amount? Or is it a both? Or is it an and, or is it an or? You know, that's kind of.
Perhaps
So
you
can
come
I-
up with an amount for discussion at the next meeting? I mean,
Well,
yeah.
So, well, can I ask, I have a question. So, in part of those questions that I raised, then shortly thereafter, we came back with a discrepancy, like, you know, it showed discrepancies amongst the counties. Then you came with a conversation about a $600,000 to $650,000
Right.
this year.
Yep.
and then a $450,000 input towards the end of next fiscal year, and then another $400,000 the following year. As far as I know, that has not been acted upon.
Correct.
So are we talking about that $1.2 million? Or?
It's all a moving jigsaw.
Right.
Every time we talk about the budget, the numbers tend to change because our financial performance changed,
Request.
or our,
No.
what we're gonna spend out in services have changed. And so it is a little bit of a moving jigsaw in that regard. We are talking about the same dollars. We're not talking about different dollars.
Okay, so.
Okay.
Right now, we're just discussing fiscal year
Yeah.
20.
Fiscal year 20,
Yeah,
fiscal year 21 would show would potentially show a higher contribution by Scott County and so forth. My financial management goal here is to get everyone equitable on the percentage of population, because it seems that's one way to measure it. Now that we have a little bit more freedom in that way, as I look back at history, like in the Monday morning quarterbacking, it's the financial goals of the region have changed after providing services. Primary goal of this budgetary process in working with the management team and the governing board has always been about providing all the services requested and identified. The dollar amount in question here today, I would seek that we have it's probably going to be an and. It's going to be a percent, or excuse me, it's probably going to be an or. A dollar amount of this dollar amount or this percentage, in order to, because really what I'm trying to get you funded through is to make the last payments under our RYC contract under this year. And to still have money available in the fiscal agent fund to bring back, at this point, Clinton County to some additional spending cash, and potentially Muscatine County, again, looking at a five-member region, trying to make sure all the pocket money is in the right pockets at the right time. But there are still large bills that are coming forward because of the types of services that we are providing in this region.
okay, so we're not gonna, so I'm gonna speak this so I have clear in my mind.
Nope, that's the best way to do it.
So originally we were talking about 650,000. So we're gonna ask you today for an amount or percentage. And I don't wanna put Scott County into a negative deficit also. I mean, Clinton County's there, and we will be June 30th. Or if not June 30th, shortly thereafter. We will not have enough money in our pool or bucket of money to get through the September 30th date for tax payments. So going back to you talked about a 600 to 650, so you are potentially could raise that to an $850,000, give or take.
It depends on how the next invoices come. And this is not to bank on anyone's service. This is just that all the services are. We've seen a number of state bills come in late, particularly in the month of November, which drained some of that cash quicker than we anticipated. If those state bills would have been coming in more in 12-month, 1/12 increments, we wouldn't be. It changes that conversation.
So can I ask? Okay, so you said. Can you give us a number?
So right now on the budget spreadsheet, on the worksheet I used on Monday afternoon, I've got 885 additional.
What I would suggest is that we put a cap on it and just say up to this
Not to
amount.
exceed
Not to
a
To be
certain amount.
determined at a further date, and I think that would be a reasonable approach to it.
Yeah, and moving into our own budget amendment for Scott County, and I'm talking Scott County's finance director, this timing works out well. I can include it into our February amendment in order to gain the board's authorization for that, and I don't expect an issue with that, in order to move that forward. When we talk about fund balance for any of our partners, it's one and the same. It's equity in this bucket, but it's also a shared equity within the region.
Right.
And so this governing board has just as much say as the 5 supervisors of Scott County.
I appreciate your work on this and just keep funneling us the information
Yep.
to help us make the right decisions, so.
So,
And
do
then-
we have a motion?
I will.
We already have it, and we have a
All
second.
All right, and I will
Sorry.
add the amount of 650,000, correct? For
No,
Not to
Tony?
exceed.
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed, I would, you know, was it 885?
I've got 885 on my Excel sheet right now.
Okay,
So we'll say 885.
okay,
That'll be
not to
amended,
exceed 885.
And that would bring Scott County back to, we started the year at 433. That would bring us up, actually up to 621. So a slight increase.
Okay.
So we may have room to ask
So
for
the
more.
motion
at the
is
end.
to ask Scott County for an amount of 880, not to exceed $885,000. And
So you
did you
amended.
second it, Jim?
So I'm just amending my
Right,
original
yeah,
motion
and Jim
and putting the
seconded
amount
the
in.
second.
Oh, Nathan
I
seconded.
think
so.
that's what I wrote. I could be wrong.
I think you're right.
You're right.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Okay. Where is it? Beck,
Aye.
Irwin,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Willie,
Aye.
Mather.
Motion carried. Under other business, I guess my question to the board is, with seeking legal counsel, do we want to have our county attorneys look at this? I am not going to ask Scott County's attorney to do it themselves. With all of the other hullabaloo with Scott County, I think we should each take it back to our county attorneys, have them look at it, and send the information. Is that okay with you?
I was gonna ask you, can I get clarity on legal counsel and who you wanted?
Or do we want to hire somebody from the outside?
We do not have the financial resources to.
Well, I'm not saying we do.
So I'm gonna say, I think we should take it back to our respective counties for their opinion, and if we want if, say, my county attorney does not feel he's comfortable making that decision,
Mhm.
then it'll be up to my
I
county
know
to
mine
seek, what's that?
I know mine won't be real comfortable with that, making that
Yeah.
decision.
So maybe, if that's the case, maybe we should, I just feel that we should take it to our county attorneys and get their opinion about it,
Mhm.
and if
First
they're not
step.
comfortable with it, do
First
we?
step.
Yeah, if we get 5 different
Five
opinions, then
different opinions.
maybe it's worth looking for legal counsel. If we get 5 same opinions, then it's probably pretty safe.
But I don't want to rely on one county attorney.
That's a good
No,
idea.
no.
Right. So if you'll all just take this letter and the information, the 28E agreement and all of that, and have our county attorneys review it.
I'm sorry, Jay, just to make sure, the question is whether the mandatory mediation applies in this case, is that the question?
Was there something else you were thinking, Nathan?
No, I just wanted to make sure, because the lawyer and me, I can ask
That's why I'm asking your
really
question.
broad, open-ended questions.
I guess maybe we also take a look at, just the 28E agreement, the wording there in the area code, and how it applies to the situation, just more broader, I guess, kind of.
So we'll all do that, and I would suggest that do it right after Christmas, because some of the courthouses are closed Monday, some of them are open, some of them are even having meetings on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve.
New
So,
Year's Eve.
anyway, with that, public comment. Todd?
I would like to thank this region. This region has come so far. I remember going back in my region in 2010 and being trained as a peer support specialist. And community mental health centers telling me we don't hire them people. And now look at us today. So I commend all of you. All of you except for Nathan. I seriously do. Because Nathan, in the last 5 months, I have seen nothing but Board of Supervisors meetings on YouTube that were just so disrespectful, blatantly putting this region at fault for everything, not just Scott County. And I'd also just like to say that as a provider, I don't care what provider it was, You know you called me, you know what you said, and the ramifications of it. You said that I would have no notice of my funding being cut. And to sit here and see you blatantly lie about things is just so disheartening to me. It is not disheartening to me for me, because I'm not in your county. It is disheartening for the providers and the people that are being served in your county, sir. That was just so, I can't even say what that was. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes, sir?
Hi, I'm Scott Dalkey. I work at MCSA in Muscatine. Regarding communication with providers, I think it was the owner from Clinton County that said, "Thank you, Mr. Farmer, for funneling this information." I rely on Nate and Felicia to give me forecasts of what the future is going to look like. I run multiple programs in Muscatine, and that information helps me forecast how I'm going to operate our business so that we can keep those vital services to the Muscatine residents. I want to say I'm proud of all of you guys for tabling this today. At the root of this is people, right? Emotions are running super deep on this table, and I understand. These are tough times, and I'm sure when this is all said and done, I'd love to take you guys all out for dinner, maybe a drink.
$3.99.
Cheap dinner.
This room
Yeah.
is all over. This
One
room
bite.
is over.
One bite.
And I want to make sure that we continue to take care of people with schizophrenia, people with delusions, and the people that have had their daughters commit suicide in our county. It sounds like you guys are understanding of that, and I'm very proud of you guys' leadership.
That's been our goal the whole time, is to provide the services. Yes.
Can ask you, Muscatine County, I'm not trying to get the county kicked out, Nathan. I'll say that.
Good.
Your big mouth got you into this trouble. I will tell the other board members, I apologize, because he has a big mouth, and he can't keep it shut. And in this situation, he pulls other people along. If he does it in his own county, that's one thing. But as for the other counties, you got you pissed off enough to kick them out. They want to leave, and you're going to say, fine, leave early. I'm going to turn to Mr. Sorensen here, and I'm going to say, I know Mr. Holliday was not aware of this letter. And he's another board member on the Board of Supervisors, as of yesterday when I talked to him. So I will say that you may not have unanimity on the board about this letter, but I think you need to bring a motion up to maybe get somebody else from Muscatine County. And you served on this board before, didn't you, sir? You signed one of the 28Es.
That's Scott Sauer.
Oh, excuse me, Scott. I'm sorry, Mr. Sauer. You can see exactly, my facial recognition's horrible. But I'm just going to point this back to you, Scott, is that there are people on that board that can do a better job. And I think you guys need to put somebody in here that can get along with everybody else and keep his mouth shut when he needs to keep his mouth shut. Because that is exactly how this got to this today, listening to everybody.
Thank you for your comments.
I will note, with respect to one matter that Mr. Askey raised, I'm not sure when he spoke with Doug Holliday, one of our supervisors. I spoke with him at approximately 7 p.m. last night before I drafted this. And he agreed that it was a good idea.
Is there any other public comment?
Yeah, if I may. Chris Anderson from Discover Muscatine. One of the news media that you guys are also fond of. I have a couple of questions, if I may. I've heard a lot. Muscatine, as you all know, is not one mind on anything, nor is any county, right?
It's not what? I'm
Of
sorry.
one mind, as any county is, right? There are people that think that things are going well, some that aren't, okay? What I've heard today, and what I've had conversations with people from outside the district, or outside the region, inside the region. My mom works at County Services. I've been a lifelong resident. And what I haven't heard today is the long-term solution to this, okay? What I've heard is a lot of pointing fingers one way or another, and that's coming from each direction. What I haven't heard is we have a huge shortfall, whether we stay in this region or go to another. I do know there are people in Muscatine that feel that regardless of which region we're in, there's going to have to be some major issues addressed. And I think some of that is the catalyst for this. And so what I would ask is, what is this region's plan for solvency going forward? Because I don't think that, as you can tell, we've got 2 supervisors here and 2 candidates for supervisor here, and it's not even election year yet, okay? So this is big in Muscatine.
At least we don't have 20.
Muscatine, historically going back, as I'm sure you're all aware, Muscatine has had a proud history of mental services. My daughter was on the Ellen Handicap Waiver for 12 years, okay? And there's been times where it's worked well, times where it didn't. But my question is to you guys. I hear the legislature puts caps on you, then you can't spend the money, you can't levy. So what is this region and also DHS, what are your goals and what are the action steps for you to take to eliminate those issues? Because what we see is a broken system as people. So what are the steps, I would ask each of the members here, what are the steps that you feel are the next thing to make this region solvent to where the people of Muscatine would want to stay with it? Because we all know that regardless, the people of Muscatine, who Nathan answers to, who these gentlemen would like to answer to, are going to say, well, why would we want to stay a part of a region that is $1 million in the hole? So I would ask each of you, what's the long-term plan to address this and continue to provide the services that
Well,
we're
the
used to?
long-term, as far as I'm concerned, is having a partnership with the state of Iowa. Until we can get the legislators to understand that there is a problem and that they have the opportunity to fix that problem by either eliminating a cap or participating some other way in financing some of the services, plus the fact that we never know till the session is closing that they're changing things to include additional services to our region. We've already submitted our budget to the State of Iowa Department of Management with what we, as our county, Lynn Bolts as our CEO for mental health services, we've submitted our budget in March. We find out in April or May that they've changed things. We're going to have to provide additional services, and they haven't given us in that legislation the opportunity to generate additional revenue. They don't change the cap. They don't do anything that is helpful for the counties and for the region to be able to provide those services. So getting the legislators on board, they know there's problems. But so far, they've done nothing to help fix them. They've only done things to create more problems with the funding.
So my follow-up question to that is, that's a nice answer that we want to partner with the legislature. But what are the specific steps to partner with the legislature? Because to me, that's somewhat of a broad statement.
Communications. Each of us,
We all lobby. We have
all
lots
of
them
us
out there.
lobby with our legislators. We let them know. They know that we're having problems. We met with our representative. Fortunately in Jackson County, we only have one of each. But we also have discussed it. We've had forums. We have invited the legislators to come to our sessions so that they can firsthand, we've had a few that have come and listened to us. They all agree there is a problem. But so far, they haven't come up with a solution to that problem that satisfies the needs, because we all know that the cost of mental health services is not going to lower, and until another problem that we have in the state of Iowa is the MCOs. They have contracts with providers of services, and then Medicaid, they're not reimbursing the providers at their medicated rate. And there's just so many things that are wrong with what's happening in Des Moines.
Okay, so then let me follow up. Are there actions that this board can take to inform the constituents of the region of these problems and what legislators are causing problems? because I believe that information and transparency is always key, right? And how can this board work with the actual members of its region? Because again, we're part of your region, you know, where we've got this weird thing going on. So I don't think that the people of Muscatine, and I would be willing to bet most of the other communities, have a firm grasp on this, right? I'd be willing to bet that probably half the people in this room don't even have a full grasp of what exactly this all entails, right? So what steps can you guys commit to, or what steps would you guys be willing to do to actively work with the legislature and hold them accountable for that? Because it sounds a little bit like passing the buck, although I do understand that they give limits, and so it's not just like passing the buck. However, it is a problem down the road.
It's definitely not passing the buck.
Hey, passing the buck was a wrong word to
So
choose.
we're capped at $30.78 per
Artificial
person. It's an artificial number. There's roughly 300,000 individuals that live in our 5-county area. That generates $9.3 million. That's based on a number that was an expenditure that was June 30th of 2015.
Right.
So
Before services were implemented fully.
before all services were implemented. We've been, through legislation, we've had to take on more crisis services. June 30th, 2019, so far, as of our Monday afternoon meeting, we had expenditures of $12,953,000
For fiscal.
for fiscal year June 30th, 2019.
Yeah.
That, if you take that number divided by 300,000 individuals, that 37.8 that we're funding at needs to be at 43.20 to cover, just to cover our cost. There's a huge discrepancy there. Now you're asking us, what can we do? We have lobbied as counties, we've lobbied. We've had them come to our county board member. We've had them come here and we've talked to them. Every one of us has been to Des Moines and lobbied and talked to our legislators and other legislators to try to help them understand the dilemma we're in.
We also share with the public that information. I get a call from somebody and I said, let the legislator know, write the governor, because that's, I mean, it's the masses.
But what they're going to tell you, and I've been in numerous meetings in Des Moines on this, and I have been in there even this fall to get ready for this legislative season, because this is the #1 priority by most municipality government, county government. It is the #1 priority in the state of Iowa to get this problem fixed.
Because of all these lobbying efforts.
Because of all of these lobbying efforts. The problem comes in is when each and every one of you get your tax bill. And you look at that bottom line, you don't care how it's divided. You're looking at that bottom line. And they get inundated with people saying, I can't pay any more taxes. I can't afford any more taxes. I can't do this. I can't, you know, I'm on a fixed income. I can't pay any more property taxes or I'm gonna lose my home. Okay, that's their argument back to us. And the problem comes in with all of the levies across the state are not the same. They're all at different areas. You'll run into the fact that when they look, a lot of times legislation looks from the top down. So they look at how much money is in all of the regions. Like we could move, you know, like a shell game, like we could move money from one side of the state to the other. We can't do that. Our funds that we raise stay within this region. And sometimes it's even a heartburn over that. But the problem is that's what they're looking at. They're looking at everybody's money. And some regions are better off than others. Some of them are going to hit this train wreck in 2 years instead of hitting it right now. That's where we run into the problem with legislation. It's not a consistent picture across the state. We talk to our legislators and we talk to legislators from other areas across the state, and they go, well, I'm not having a problem in my region. I'm like, not yet, but you will. You know, and that's what we try to convey. The other thing we've told them is these are mandated services. We don't have the money to pay for them. So if you don't want us to raise taxes, then you need to tell us what services are going to get cut.
You
So
said
then-
you had another question?
Well, as a follow-up to that, so to help people understand this, essentially what you're saying is that there are essentially two groups lobbying the legislature. There's a group that is wanting lower taxes and a group that wants more dollars for services. This is the classic government conundrum. So would it be fair to say that the people that are lobbying for lower taxes are doing a better job of lobbying their legislatures than what this board is?
They're just saying they can't pay. And that's
No,
what they're saying.
But the
Well,
legislature could.
for example, Farm Bureau
Could the
just put out-
legislature not take what you've said and what the lower tax people have said and say, we are going to raise the taxes to pay for this? Is that a possibility? And why has that not happened?
There is a possibility. There is discussion in Des Moines right now to take 3/8 of a sales tax cent and have that go to mental health funding, which would be very helpful.
Would be tremendous.
But the other thing is we can't totally rely on sales tax either, because that fluctuates. So we would still need an underlining levy authority. We could probably lower some of the levies if we had a good tax, sales tax contribution come in to help take care of the issue.
But it's still a total tax. I don't think, I think a lot of people would ask me to ask, whether it's a sales tax or a property tax, it just depends on which place it comes from. So
Okay.
again, my question becomes, what would you guys do? If the problem here is total budget dollars, what will you guys commit to doing to get the legislature to increase the dollars coming into?
All we can do is communicate the need.
And that's what
And I was reminded that public comment is 3 minutes, so I will have to move to somebody else and then. you
Okay,
can
then
do
I
that.
will follow up with interviews with each of you, if that's okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I gave you my answer.
Hi, my name is Henry Marquardt. I live in Muscatine County, and for sake of transparency, as Chris said, I'm a candidate for the seat in the county board currently held by Mr. Mather. I think there's a couple things. First of all, I want to thank you for tabling the measure to remove Muscatine County. I think a couple of things. One, clear from Chris's question, I mean, there's some big issues. I mean, my son is a political director for Genesis. I mean, it's, listening to him and others, I mean, there is this, the question of the state just shirking its responsibilities for healthcare in general. That's been a trend for the last few years. You have the issue about what the county should pay. Those are big issues that, you're not going to solve today, tomorrow. Maybe get solved after November, I don't know. But one of the things is that, clearly within Muscatine County, and I think there's a couple of things. One is, it is unfortunate that some of this, and I appreciate to see cooler heads prevail, that some of this is a matter of trust and personalities, and hopefully we can all move past that. I don't think that the people of Muscatine County realize that if this gets screwed up by Muscatine County, that it's basically a death sentence for providing services, because we can't spend money, we can't levy money, and if you can't do both, you can't provide the services, because Muscatine County can't print its own money. So that's an issue. I think we've seen the county board take today now really two separate and distinctly opposed actions. One is to say we're going to withdraw. The other one is to say let's mediate and discuss. And those two are two different things. I actually do appreciate you taking the time, because I am a lawyer, and I have a real question about whether or not a letter submitted to this board without a county board approval or a county board resolution has any legal consequence. So I appreciate you folks taking the time to review this. This is a serious matter for Muscatine County, and I know it is for your other counties too. And I just wanted to express my thanks for you for the way that you folks are handling this, because it's very clear in Muscatine County that there's a huge difference of opinion about how we should be moving on with this. And as I said, I don't think that the public realizes what the effect of possibly being without a region could have. And listening to the representative of the Department of Public Health, that no matter what I mean, while the state could intervene, it's going to take time, and while it's taking time, people are gonna lose their services. So, yeah, I just wanted to thank the members of this board for their consideration of Muscatine County's position.
Is there anyone else that wishes to make public comment? Seeing no one,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn, is there a second? Second.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Everyone
Yeah.
have.
And a Happy New Year,
Happy
too.
New Year.
Yeah, because we won't complain.
Meeting is adjourned.